The audience is on the edge of their seats, eagerly waiting for one of the most explosive interviews in television history. On one side, the polarizing figure of Donald Trump, the former president, the real estate mogul, and a man who has been at the center of countless controversies. On the other, James Carson, a talk show host notorious for his sharp tongue and relentless questioning. He has a reputation for pushing his guests to their breaking points, often exposing truths they'd prefer to keep hidden. Tonight, however, the stakes are higher. Rumors have been swirling behind the scenes. Carson has information that could rattle Trump to his core. What begins as a typical celebrity interview promises to take an unexpected and thrilling turn. The cameras are rolling, but even they can't predict what's about to unfold. The tension is palpable. Will Carson be able to crack the carefully constructed facade of one of the most powerful figures of the modern era? Or will Trump hold his ground, showing the world that even he is impervious to pressure? This isn't just an interview. It's a battle of wills, and in this showdown, there are no rules. The lights dim as the cameras focus on the two figures sitting across from each other on the grand stage. Donald Trump, a man whose name is synonymous with controversy, sits with his usual air of dominance, hands folded and eyes steady. Across from him, James Carson, the infamous talk show host, leans forward, his expression one of quiet intensity. Carson has never shied away from confrontation, and tonight, he is ready to take on the most unpredictable guest he has ever had. The audience watches in hushed silence, knowing that this interview will be anything but ordinary. James Carson, well, Mr. Trump, thank you for joining us tonight. I have to say, the country has been through a lot in the years since you left office. From the storming of the Capitol to the ongoing division in the country, your time in office is still hotly debated. But I have to ask, do you ever regret anything about your presidency? The things you said, the actions you took, did you ever stop and think, maybe I could have done things differently? Donald Trump pauses, then leans forward slightly. Listen, James. I've always done what I thought was right for America. I didn't care about the political consequences. I cared about getting things done. I ran the country like a business because that's what it needed. Strong leadership. And I've never regretted that. As for the Capitol, yes, there were things I could have done differently, but that's hindsight. What we need to understand is why it happened, not just point fingers. James Carson, but what about the rhetoric, the language used? You were accused of inciting violence, of dividing the nation. Don't you think your words had an impact? Donald Trump, his tone sharpens. I've been clear from the beginning. I never incited violence. I told people to be peaceful, to show their strength in a lawful way. But, James, you know how the media works. They take things out of context. They twist everything I say to fit their narrative. I am the one who told people to stand up for their country, to fight for what's right. James Carson, but let us talk about your supporters, Mr. Trump, the people who rallied behind you, some of whom went so far as to storm the Capitol. Do you feel any responsibility for that? Donald Trump pauses, visibly agitated. Look, James, I've never encouraged violence. You have to understand that the people who supported me were frustrated. They felt ignored. I gave them a voice, and they used that voice. Some of them made poor decisions, yes, but they were angry. And who can blame them? Washington has been broken for years. I simply pointed out the cracks. James Carson, and yet, some of your words, some of your actions have led to chaos. It's hard to ignore that fact, but let us move on. Mr. Trump, you've made a lot of bold claims over the years. One of the most intriguing is your assertion that the election was stolen. You've doubled down on this, even after courts and multiple recounts confirmed Joe Biden's victory. Why do you keep pushing this narrative, even in the face of overwhelming evidence? Donald Trump leans back, a slight smirk forming on his face. James, I am not going to back down on this. There's evidence. There are things that don't add up. The American people know it. They see it, and they are angry. The election was rigged, and I am not the only one who believes that. People all over the country are still talking about it, but let us be clear. I am not the problem here. The problem is a system that is rigged against the people. James Carson, I have to say, Mr. Trump, your continued insistence on this issue is puzzling. Do you believe that by holding on to this narrative, you're dividing the country even further? Donald Trump leans forward, voice firm. No, I believe I am telling the truth. And sometimes the truth divides people. Sometimes you have to say things that others don't want to hear. But this country was built on the foundation of truth, and that's what I am fighting for. James Carson, let us shift gears a bit. You've made no secret of your business empire, and many have wondered how your presidency impacted your personal wealth. There were questions about conflicts of interest, about whether you used your position to benefit your business. What do you say to that? Donald Trump pauses, his face a mask of calm. I've been asked this question 1,000 times. But let me make one thing clear. I did not use my presidency to line my pockets. I did everything by the book. My businesses were under scrutiny, and I didn't shy away from that. I stepped away from them when I became president. I put everything in a trust, and I gave it all to my sons to run. My focus was always on the country. I didn't need the money. James Carson raises an eyebrow, but there were still business dealings going on while you were in office, and your properties were still benefiting from government events. How do you reconcile that? Donald Trump, smiling, you're talking about things that every president deals with. I am not the first to have a business while in office, but let me tell you, the American people saw through the media as attacks. They knew what I was doing, and they respected it. The tension in the room is palpable. Carson-asked questions have started to hit their mark, but Trump isn't backing down. The back and forth continues as the two men lock horns, each holding firm in their beliefs. The atmosphere in the studio shifts. The tension between Donald Trump and James Carson is palpable, the audience sensing that the moment they've been waiting for is approaching. Trump sits slightly back in his chair, but his eyes are fixed on Carson. The provocations, the sharp questions, the unresolved tension, everything has led to this point. Carson has been playing a delicate game, and now, he asks ready to drop a bombshell. He takes a deep breath and leans in. The room goes silent. James Carson, Mr. Trump, you've spent years defending your actions, your rhetoric, and even your presidency. But I have to ask you, do you truly believe that you've always been in the right? Do you ever wonder if your refusal to admit mistakes, your continuous defiance, has made you into the very thing you once opposed? Trump's expression hardens. The question is a direct challenge to his entire narrative, and for a brief moment, he appears to hesitate. The crowd holds its breath, waiting for his response. Donald Trump, voice cold and unwavering. No, James. I've never been wrong. I did what I had to do. I don't live in a world of what-ifs. I live in the world of what is, and the fact is, my presidency changed this country for the better. People know that. They see what's going on now, and they wish I was still in charge. James Carson, eyes narrow, you still believe that, after everything that has happened, after the accusations, the investigations, the insurrection, you still believe you were in the right? Donald Trump, shaking his head slowly, I don't need to answer to you or anyone else, James. I know what I did, and I know what's right. I've never been afraid to stand up for my beliefs, even when everyone else was trying to tear me down. James Carson, leaning forward, voice barely a whisper. But what about your family, Mr. Trump, the ones who had to watch you through all of this, your children, your wife? Don't you ever think about the damage this has done to them? Trump's gaze shifts slightly, his jaw tightening. The question strikes a nerve. For a moment, it asks as if he asked caught off guard, but only for a moment. His eyes return to Carson, sharp and calculating. Donald Trump, tightly, my family has always been with me, and I've done everything for them, to give them a future they can be proud of. You're trying to turn this into something it's not. My family understands the sacrifices. They understand what I've done for this country, and they'll be just fine. The room is thick with an uncomfortable silence. Carson senses that he has finally cracked the facade. The question he has been holding back for the entire interview is about to come out. The air seems to freeze as he takes one final risk. James Carson, but Mr. Trump pauses for effect. Is there something we don't know? Something you've been hiding? Something that would change the way we see you? your presidency, everything. Trump asks, eyes narrow. He doesn't respond right away. Carson asks, words hang in the air like a challenge. The audience is on the edge of their seats. They feel the weight of what's being asked. And then, in a moment that feels both inevitable and shocking, Trump leans forward slightly, breaking the silence. Donald Trump, voice lower, almost a whisper, if you Ray talking about the so-called secrets, James, you don't have a clue what you Ray getting yourself into. The room erupts with nervous energy. Carson asks, calculated risk has paid off. He asks, touched a nerve. But what does Trump mean? What is he hinting at? James Carson, smirking, leaning back in his chair. I think you know exactly what I mean, Mr. Trump. There are things about your past that we've all been curious about for years. And you've danced around it, avoided it. But tonight, the truth is coming out. For the first time in the interview, Trump's usual confidence wavers. A flicker of something unspoken crosses his face. The camera zooms in. Carson watches him closely, sensing that this is the breaking point. What will Trump do next? Donald Trump, visibly agitated, but holding control. You Ray pushing, James. You Ray pushing for something that you regret. I've done things. Yes, I've been through the ringer, but I am still here, and I'll be here long after you and your questions are forgotten. You want answers? Fine, but know this, some things are better left untouched. Some truths are too dangerous to be revealed. The moment hangs in the air, thick with anticipation. What will Carson do next? Will he press further? Or is he satisfied with the revelations he has already unearthed? The confrontation is far from over. The audience is on the edge of their seats, waiting for the final twist. The tension in the studio has reached its peak, and the room is thick with anticipation. For a moment, everything feels suspended in time. The cameras have caught every nuance, every flicker of emotion. But the final moments of the interview will be more than just a conclusion to a story. They will be the catalyst for something bigger. The host, James Carson, watches Trump with a steady gaze, waiting for the final piece to fall into place. The audience is on the edge of their seats. What happens next could change everything. James Carson, sitting back, voice calm but probing, you've given us a glimpse into the man behind the headlines, Mr. Trump, and in doing so, you've revealed a truth that many have overlooked, that no one is beyond redemption, no one is beyond change. You've stood tall against criticism, refused to bow to pressure. But the question is, will you continue down the path of division and confrontation, or is there a chance that, in the end, you choose unity? Trump remains silent for a long time, his eyes shifting as he processes the question. Carson asks, words have struck a deep chord, one that goes beyond politics or power. It asks a question about the very nature of human existence, the choice between holding on to one's pride and ego or embracing the possibility of transformation. Donald Trump, in a softer tone than before, you make it sound easy, James. Change is hard, it asks Massey, but maybe you Ray right, maybe there asks something to that. For the first time, the audience sees a glimpse of vulnerability in Trump. It asks fleeting, but it asks enough to make them pause. Carson, sensing the shift, doesn't push further. He allows the moment to breathe. James Carson, leaning forward, voice sincere, I am not asking you to apologize, Mr. Trump. I am asking you to recognize the power you hold, not just over the country, but over the hearts of the people. You've been given a platform, a voice that resonates beyond words. What will you do with that power in the days ahead? Trump looks down for a moment, then meets Carson's gaze. The power of his position has never been clearer than it is right now. In that fleeting moment, the weight of his choices hangs in the air. The power to change, to inspire, to lead in a new direction, it asks all within his reach. Donald Trump, with quiet determination, I know what I've done. I know what I can do, but this isn't about me anymore. It asks about the people. It asks about what they want, and maybe, just maybe, they deserve more than what I've given them so far. The room is still. For a brief moment, the world seems to hold its breath. Carson nods, not pushing for more, but allowing Trump the space to reflect. The final moments of the interview unfold in silence, but it asks not the silence of defeat. It asks a silence filled with possibility, a chance for reflection. A chance for something greater. Trump stands up, his demeanor unchanged, but there asks something different in his eyes. A recognition, perhaps, that his role in history is not yet written. And, more importantly, the possibility that it may be rewritten if he chooses to take the road less traveled. James Carson, smiling. It has been an unforgettable conversation, Mr. Trump. Thank you for your time. Trump gives a curt nod, his expression unreadable, but something in his posture suggests a shift. The interview ends, but the questions linger. What is the future of a man who has seen both the heights of power and the depths of public scrutiny? And more importantly, what kind of legacy will he leave behind? As the lights fade and the cameras cut, the audience is left with a profound sense of uncertainty, but also with hope. A belief that change is possible, that the power of redemption lies within everyone, no matter their past. The interview may be over, but the journey, for both Trump and the people who followed him, is far from finished. The message is clear. The power of choice is the most potent force in the world. Each individual has the ability to choose the path they will walk, and each choice, no matter how small, can lead to something greater. The question is, what will you do with your power? What kind of future will you create?